This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law.
Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Congressman Chris Smith. We're thrilled that our television audience is with us today. We've got a lot to talk about, especially on the life issue. We've got a really exclusive interview with Congressman Chris Smith, trying to get an update on where we are. We're going to talk about the situation with Planned Parenthood, but we've put together a discussion, a video presentation of what has taken place in Florida with that hearing with Planned Parenthood. You must see this.
Discussing here is in the event that a human being is born and in need of medical care, what do we do?
If a baby is born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that's struggling for life?
We believe that any decision that's made should be left up to the woman, her family, and the physician.
What happens in a situation where a baby is alive, breathing on a table, moving? What do your physicians do at that point?
I do not have that information. I am not a physician. I'm not an abortion provider.
I understand that you're not a physician, but you do represent
Yes.
Physicians who do perform this activity. And can you tell me what happens when a baby is alive on the table? At that point, what do they do with the baby that is struggling to live?
Well, we don't know even how prevalent this situation is.
I don't know how else I can get an answer, Mr. Chairman.
You stated that that a baby born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, that decision should be left to the doctor and the family. Is that what you're saying?
That decision should be between the patient and the healthcare provider.
I think that at that point, the patient would be the child struggling on a table. Wouldn't you agree?
That's a very good question. I really don't know how to answer that. I think I would be glad to have some more, conversations with you about this.
What objection could you possibly have to obligate a doctor to transport a child born alive to a hospital, where it seems to me they would be most likely to be able to survive?
What about this, and I'm just speaking out here, what about those situations where it's in a rural healthcare setting, the hospital is 45 minutes, an hour away, that's the closest trauma center, emergency room. There's just some logistical issues involved that we've got some concerns about.
Who cares if it's a rural health clinic? If there's a baby born that's struggling, we ought to do, I think that's every right for us to intervene if we have to make sure that struggling child survives. And to say that we're inserting politics in it is just ludicrous. This is just, again, like Representative Davis says, I can't imagine that we're having this conversation. It's a great bill, and I look forward to supporting it.
What you're saying, if you oppose it, is you have a living baby struggling to survive, and you do something other. I don't even want to talk about what you do, but you do something other than resuscitate and save the baby. And I would urge your support of this bill. It makes total sense. I congratulate the sponsor.
Boy, I've been pro-choice my whole life, and I can't think of a more sensible bill in this regard. So I'll cut it short, and I'll support the bill. Thank you.
Folks, we have a lot more ahead. We're going to be joined by Congressman Chris Smith for an exclusive interview, getting an update on where the life issue is. But you just saw what's going on in Florida, and Planned Parenthood's response is, again, they're still opposed to the legislation to protect that child that survived the abortion. We've got a lot more ahead. Stay tuned. Well, joining us now on the air is a good friend of ours, Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey. He's been such a stalwart leader in the fight for life and so many issues, representing not only the good people of his district, but all of us that are concerned about the life issue. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jay, and thank you again for your testimony on Capitol Hill just a few weeks ago. It was pivotal, and it will make a huge, and already is making a huge difference in the life of an American who has been incarcerated in Iran. So thank you so much.
I appreciate your participation in that, and as I said, we were glad that we finally got the statement from the Secretary of State. That would not have happened without you, your colleagues participating in that. I want to turn our attention, Congressman, to the issue that you and I have been fighting for a long time. That's the right to life. Planned Parenthood has really created quite a furor down in Florida, a real sense of where they're really coming from. I mean, if there was any sense of where Planned Parenthood is on the issue of the unborn child, or for that matter, the born child, as we're going to hear in a moment, that was put to rest with testimony that came out in Florida, where the Florida Alliance of Planned Parenthood Affiliates was called before a House committee in Florida regarding basically a similar bill that we've already passed in the Congress that's already law, which is the Infants Born Alive Protection Act. Let me play for you. This is number 2. This is a Congress representative in Florida, Florida Representative Jim Boyd, asking the Representative Elisa Snow from Planned Parenthood about a child that's born alive, and her answer is troubling. And really, Planned Parenthood has issued a clarification statement but still hasn't backed away from it. Let's play it first, and I'll get your comments.
It's just really hard for me to even ask you this question because I'm almost in disbelief. If a baby is born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that's struggling for life?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we believe that any decision that's made should be left up to the woman, her family, and the physician.
Congressman, we've been playing this on radio this week. Here you've got the baby survives the attempted murder and the abortion. He's alive or she's alive on the table, and Planned Parenthood's position is that's between the woman, her family, and the physician. And by the way, even with their clarifying statement, they're still opposed to the bill, which would protect that child. Your sense and your feeling about this and where you see this going?
Well, frankly, it's outrageous, but not surprising. It's shocking, but again, not surprising. Planned Parenthood is directly responsible for 6 million unborn babies who have been killed in their clinics, an untold number who perhaps even survived for a very short period of time. There was an undercover sting operation done by Students for Life in 2008, and an abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood, in my district, in Freehold, and there on camera, the Planned Parenthood representative is talking about the fact that this is after the Born Alive Act, federal legislation went into law, that, the children die. She didn't call, of course, she said baby, after 22 weeks, 23 weeks, but it takes a little time sometimes because the woman must go through the actual birth process, and it sometimes results in a live birth. No concern, no empathy, no compassion whatsoever for that struggling infant. I have called, and I've said it on the floor, and I say it repeatedly. Planned Parenthood is Child Abuse Incorporated. There is a reckless disregard for the unborn child. Right. There is a reckless disregard for the newborn child. And we've seen that. They were against the legislation on partial birth abortion. They are against virtually every proposal that has ever been pushed by the pro-life side to protect the sanctity of a child's life or of a newborn.
Congressman, I've said, and some of my law partners have said, that what you've got is a situation where basically Planned Parenthood worships at the altar of abortion. You've got the trial going on this abortionist Gosnell in the Philadelphia area, where he's been charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder in the killing of 7 infants born alive and viable during what was deemed to be illegal late-term abortions. Kate Michelman supporting his position, which is, of course, former head of NARAL. These groups and these organizations really have no regard. We're seeing the distinction now, though. We don't view it as a distinction between the unborn child in the womb and the child that's outside of the womb. In our view, in your view, that's a child entitled to full protection of the law. But Planned Parenthood is now becoming very clear. They view that child born alive as having no rights, no legitimacy, no human rights attached to his birth or her birth.
Well, again, it's not surprising. Planned Parenthood performs abortions. They promote it everywhere, not just in the United States, but around the world. But, Dr. Gosnell, his abortionist, this man who has his clinic has been called the House of Horrors, there's been a complete cover-up on the part of the national media about the trial, about the terrible deeds allegedly that have been done against women as well as against babies. But, this idea of after-birth abortion is not new.
Right.
There was just a couple of years ago, and I actually did a floor speech on it, two bioethicists talked about and justified after-birth abortion because the child, once born, can be a very much of a burden. They cry. They have to have their diapers changed. It causes stress, so therefore an after-birth abortion can be justified. If people think I'm making it up, this was the floor speech that I gave, and it was right out of a medical journal that talked about this in tones that were frightening.
Yeah.
Well, Planned Parenthood does this each and every day. Years ago, there was, the Philadelphia Inquirer did a piece called The Dreaded Complication, 1981. I was in the pro-life movement then. I had a copy of it. I remember reading it with unbelievable anger and sadness. 400 to 500 children per year were surviving later-term abortions, according to the Centers for Disease Control. The doctor that gave that number, an abortionist, Willard Cates, big abortionist. He's still very much involved with Family Health International, gets a lot of foreign aid money, and they promote their agenda around the world. In 1977, this shows you the Planned Parenthood perspective.
Right.
He spoke at a Planned Parenthood conference, and the name of his presentation was Pregnancy, the second most prevalent sexually transmitted disease after gonorrhea. So gonorrhea and a baby are the moral equivalent to Planned Parenthood, to Cates, and to all of these others. Because again, ultrasound has shattered the myth that there's not a child that's growing and developing. And birth is an event that happens to each and every one of us. We know that birth isn't the beginning of life. That is medically and scientifically absurd. And yet they cling to this, and with credentials behind their names, PhDs and medical doctors, they promote this barbaric procedure called abortion, which has resulted in 55 million children dead in the United States of America alone.
We've got a lot more with Congressman Chris Smith. We're going to get into where the legislation's going in Washington, what Planned Parenthood is up to here in the United States and around the globe. Stay tuned. Congressman, they go a step beyond it here. I mean, what we've seen with the Planned Parenthood situation with their alliance in Florida is the next step, which is, and I'm saying this obviously in quotations, the logical step for them, and that is that there is no protection for the unborn or born, for that matter, if an abortion procedure was ongoing. Again, let me play for you. This is from State Representative Jose Olivier in Florida, asking again the question to Alicia Snow from Planned Parenthood. Let's take a listen.
You stated that a baby born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, that decision should be left to the doctor and the family. Is that what you're saying?
That decision should be between the patient and the healthcare provider.
I think that at that point, the patient would be the child struggling on a table. Wouldn't you agree?
That's a very good question. I really don't know how to answer that. I think, I would be glad to have some more, conversations with you about this.
And then Planned Parenthood comes out with a clarification statement, but still opposing the legislation, which is the Florida version of the Infant Born Alive Protection Act. Interestingly, Congressman, I think you'll appreciate this, a pro-choice, or I would say pro-abortion, but pro-choice is how he describes himself, State Representative Mike Cleland, Democrat in Florida, was also asking questions about this. He was concerned about it, and he ended up with this. Let me play number 9 for you, and this is a guy that's pro-choice, and here's what he had to end up saying.
Boy, I've been pro-choice my whole life, and I can't think of a more sensible bill in this regard. So I'll cut it short, and I'll support the bill.
You mentioned, Congressman, the credentials. I think we've got a situation with the veneer being peeled off of Planned Parenthood. We've got several lawsuits against Planned Parenthood for fraudulent billing practices. We have the undercover pieces. I know they're still getting funding, and the Obama administration, President Obama was opposed to the Infant Born Alive Protection Act. We know that. Where do you see the pro-life legislation possibly going? What's your sense of the veneer coming off of Planned Parenthood? Or are they in so lockstep with some on the other side that whatever they do, they kind of get a pass?
Well, when the media, mainstream media, finally gets around to exposing the abortion culture and the abortion mills and what they have done, not just to babies, but as you know so well because you have prosecuted or brought cases on behalf of women who have either died or have been gravely injured. This is a nefarious enterprise that has unfortunately marketed itself as empowerment for women as well as compassion. It is anything but. It hurts women, sometimes takes their lives. Over 400 women have died from legal abortions that we know of since 1973, since it's been legalized. So women still are put at grave risk, particularly psychologically, and all of that is glossed over. Even when we try to pass on the state level informed consent statutes, who's opposing it? Planned Parenthood. Eventually, as long as we stay determined and smart and keep pushing with angst and anger towards none, but certainly with resolve, this terrible empire that Planned Parenthood has built up, not just in the U.S., but around the world, which again has caused untold numbers of babies and mothers to suffer, will collapse. But it will take dogged prayer, determination, wise legal strategies, the kind that you employ, as well as legislative strategies. Unfortunately, Barack Obama is a wholly owned subsidiary of Planned Parenthood and of the abortion industry. He has shown it repeatedly by not only litmus testing his Supreme Court and judicial nominees, but everyone else in his cabinet as well that have any kind of jurisdiction over this issue. So, we are in a very defensive mode on Capitol Hill. The Senate under Harry Reid and he used to be pro-life, I would point out, when he was a House member, is decidedly pro-abortion, although we are able to win some modest victories there. And the House is solidly pro-life behind the leadership of John Boehner and Eric Cantor and our leadership. People need to know that elections make a difference. We're seeing it in consequence. Obamacare rolls out in 2014. We've already seen it with the unbelievably unconstitutional and I think unfair coercion of people to provide abortifacients in their health care. And look at the penalty, $100 per day per employee if you don't do what Obama and company tell us we have to do in our insurance program.
Let me tell you something about that one, or ask you something and give you some information. We've got 7 cases going on right now against the HHS mandate. 6 have been litigated to injunction stage. We've obtained injunctions in all 6. Most recently, the D.C. Court of Appeals initially ruled against us. We requested a rehearing en banc, and the original panel reversed themselves and issued the injunction. But I've said, Congressman, that Obamacare was the largest abortion-providing bill in U.S. history, that this is basically it's a bailout for the abortion industry. And the president tried to deny it, but when you read the bill, it's there, and we know what we're paying for in the insurance and these mandates. So this becomes the most significant increase in abortion paid for by taxpayers that disagree.
Jay, the exchanges, as you know so well, which come online in 2014, will include publicly funded abortion. And it does it outside the scope of the Hyde Amendment, the Medicaid ban on abortion, all the other bans that are still in effect. What Obamacare did was create a separate pool of funding and a whole new mechanism to fund insurance policies. So there will be a publicly funded abortion scheme in virtually every state that adopts this. And over time, if it's not repealed, it will be every state. Public subsidy, as Planned Parenthood itself tells us, leads to more abortions. The Guttmacher Institute, which used to be affiliated with Planned Parenthood and a pro-abortion think tank and research arm, and I think their information is skewed very often, but they nevertheless have said that something like a quarter of the abortions, 25% of the abortions, don't occur because there is not a publicly funded subsidy there to facilitate that abortion. The law is a great teacher, if it's paid for and facilitated at that time of crisis, it might become more doable, may tip the scales when other things are all being weighed as well. So it's a very, very important, and we know, I remember when Henry Hyde learned that well over 1 million children are playing soccer today and are getting married or, were survived what would have been an abortion because their mothers didn't have the abortion because it was not publicly funded. He broke down in tears that so many children are alive because of that ban on public funding. Obamacare, as you said so wisely, grossly reverses that and says we're all in. We're paying for abortions. And even community health centers and many of the important health means of helping people who are lower income under Obamacare, they're not covered by the Hyde Amendment ban on community health centers. Again, a separate funding stream was established. So at the time of this administration's choosing, or perhaps a court case, we would see an even further expansion, high-risk pools as well. In every area, the Stupak-Pitts Amendment would have precluded funding for abortion in an ironclad fashion. Obama would not accept that. That's telling in and of itself.
Yep.
And then, of course, went into the non-effective executive order, which unfortunately got Bart Stupak and some pro-life Democrats to sign on. And then this so-called prevention mandate, which as you're doing yeoman's work, and I'm so grateful. We're all grateful for your work on this. To tell people, to coerce them to fund Ella and Plan B, abortifacients, and all means of preventing pregnancy. There's no permissiveness about this. It is you do it or you will be fined in a draconian fashion. It may even put you and will likely put you out of business. And so there's, they're using the coercive aspects of the law to do the will of Planned Parenthood and the whole abortion lobby. And it's a surge, the likes of which I've never seen. I've been in the pro-life movement since 1972. I've never seen such a surge. We're fighting back. But, those people who thought voting for Obama had no consequences, and, well, the consequence of that move has been catastrophic for the babies and equally for their mothers.
It sure has. This has been, I said, the most pro-abortion administration we've seen in our lifetime. I think the challenges facing, I echo exactly what you're saying, Congressman, the challenges facing life right now and the unborn are incredible. I've never seen anything like this. This HHS mandate is so draconian, so over the top, such a reach into the private conscience of individuals, the likes of which would turn our founders upside down. They would not even recognize the country that's being governed right now. But nevertheless, we fight those in the halls of Congress, we fight those in the courts, and we sure are glad that Congressman Chris Smith is in the halls of Congress for us. Congressman, thanks for being with us today, and thanks.
We're glad you're in the courtroom and everywhere else, Jay.
Well, thank you.
So much.
And again, thanks for all your hard work on this, and thanks for coming by today. It really means a difference.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's going to do it for the broadcast this week. We're thrilled that Congressman Chris Smith came by our offices in Washington, D.C., and a huge thank you to Paul and Jan Crouch, the entire TBN family that allows us to bring you this broadcast every week. We don't pay for the airtime, and that means we have more lawyers in the halls of Congress, in courtrooms around America and around the world defending freedom because of the support of the TBN family and Paul and Jan Crouch. We thank you for that, and we'll talk to you next week. Well, I really appreciate you watching the broadcast here for the American Center for Law and Justice, and I want to encourage you to visit our website at aclj.org. And I've also got a great resource I want to give you. We call it Foundations of Freedom. It's the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Ten Commandments, and all in a great booklet. Just call us at 877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or aclj.org.